Time is the enemy. In all other circumstances, this would be a cliche, and not a very good one at that. But when it comes to Exodus, it's a very literal one. The more you travel away in Exodus, the more you actually play the game, the more the people you left behind will start to slip away. This is just one of the many details that make Exodus a very interesting prospect. Now, very recently, I was invited to a presentation, a behind-the-scenes look at Exodus by Wizards of the Coast with the developers Archetype. So that means I've got a whole bunch of information to share with you about the game that wasn't revealed at the recent Game Awards. On screen then, you can see the brand new trailer for the game. It actually gives you a bit of gameplay insight as well as a whole load of cutscenes. And here is what the developers have to say about the game itself. Now, this comes from Archetype's Chris King, and he talks about Exodus as an RPG. And notably, he didn't focus heavily on the amount of hours it will take to complete the game or the map size. In fact, he quite heavily focused on what the game isn't. An example being that King describes an early internal debate that the studio had about open-world RPGs, specifically that they often bombard you with so much content, and how often that comes at the expense of quality. Something you often see when games send you off doing a bunch of fetch quests and playing just for the sake of playing. It's a criticism aimed at a particular kind of experience, lots of activity, but not much meaning. Now, Archetype's solution is not to go smaller, far from it. Instead, it's to focus on being a very deliberate type of game. King says then that the team is trying to strike a balance where every piece of content is hand-curated and where everything is there for a reason, whether that's pushing the main story forward, pushing companion stories forward, or doing something that matters to a character. The emphasis here, at least in how the studio frames it, is that the size of the game is less important than the purpose of the game. And we've got some really good examples historically here. The Mass Effect franchise comes to mind. These were games that are very memorable, they're highly dense in quality gameplay, quality story telling, and some amazing characters. But what they're not is hundreds of long-hour epics. Instead, what we've got is a very tightly focused narrative that, for many people, lasted multiple tens of hours, but also highly memorable. And all of this is worth keeping in mind because it's the foundation for the other bigger claims that Exodus makes. And very specifically, Archetype aren't promising that just that your stories will branch, but also that the goal here is to make players feel like co-authors of the experience. Those are his exact words, and not passengers along for the ride. In other words, just a part of the experience is choosing different dialogue options, but there's a bigger impact here, one that is about shaping reputation, shaping relationships, shaping what happens back home over the course of multiple years, and then living with the results multiple generations later. So yeah, that's the first checkpoint here. Exodus is positioning itself as an RPG that tries to avoid empty padding, and that wants to give players agency and allow them to feel the structure of the game rather than just being a superficial experience. But here's a question, what does that agency actually attach to? So Archetype sets Exodus in the Centauri star cluster. This is around about 15,000 light years away from Earth, but the game's lore, the game's history starts much earlier than that, and it's on Earth in the 21st century, a point where humans are forced to flee a dying planet. I guess this means in a not too distant future. So humanity leaves Earth on Ark ships, searching for a new home on a super long journey, and that ends with humanity settling in the Centauri cluster. And this is where you eventually find yourself as a player on a planet Laden. Your character is June Aslan. You're a lowly scavenger, you're struggling to survive on your home planet, and Laden, it's described, is struggling with something called the Rot. This is a very powerful technological virus that is basically destroying all technology that is required to make your planet survive. The planet itself has been terraformed, but the terraformers are breaking down, and Laden is basically crumbling. Now, this isn't been presented as a background dressing. Instead, it's framed as the main motivation that's pushing the player forward. Stopping the Rot is the goal, and saving Laden is the reason that you go out into the wider star cluster. And this is where the whole impact of time, specifically time dilation and time as an antagonist, starts coming into play. When you leave your planet Laden, a few days will pass for you, but years will pass for everyone back home. Anyone who's familiar with time dilation or have seen Interstellar will be well aware of how this all plays out. So that means when you return back home to Leyden, you'll see the impact of your choices you made before you left, and that those changes actually propagate across the game, across the years and across the generations. In the presentation, the developers actually referenced viewing the game as a kind of a cross between Indiana Jones meeting Interstellar. Although personally, I kind of get a Mass Effect vibe here with Interstellar, but perhaps that's just me. So the character you play, June, is a scavenger, as I said, but it does have a heritage. It's very powerful. You're connected to what's called a Traveller dynasty. That means you have a unique genetic modification, and this allows you to use the powerful celestial technology in ways that other humans just can't. And these facts, kind of pivot the point between struggling to survive and becoming someone who can influence the fate of the whole game. So as the game progresses, you slowly reclaim your Traveller heritage, and that means you rise up to become a champion or a leader or a hero of your people. Now, it was also pointed out that the version of June isn't locked to the version we've seen in the trailer, as the trailer only features a male version. The developers say that the game has some customized options here, and that at the start this lets you set up and play a female version of June as well. So again, very much like Mass Effect, and I guess a lot of other titles out there, Cyberpunk and many others. Now, beyond appearance, the game's also intended to let you roleplay through choices that affect reputation and how others perceive you in the world. I got the impression this means there will always be a friction between what you want as a player and what might actually have impact on the story and the world around you. In terms of specifics on gameplay, Exodus was described as a third-person action RPG. And when they talked about combat, they framed it as a system designed to support different approaches. So they said there's been a heavy focus here on playing your own way. The obvious examples being you could choose to play stealth, or you could simply go run and gun. And this is also where companions come into play. These are not just going to be narrative companions, they're also part of how you build synergies in encounters. And that means you're about to use your companions alongside weapon systems and other progression elements. An example of this was a playstyle that they described as the Space Wizard. I don't think that's an official title, but it's just the way they described it. And in that context, they referenced the Livestone Gauntlet. And they said that there's going to be avenues where you can literally rain down death from above, their own words. He also said that if you're into companions, there are ways to go more tactical and lean more heavily into them as instead. So I guess you could use them as the main attackers and you kind of provide a support role. A lot of different options here then, apparently, and I'm kind of keen to see how this actually all plays out. Now, in terms of equipment, there's one particular core weapon that they spoke about, and this is what they called the Recycler. They described it as a major upgrade component of the game, and they kind of joked that they called it internally the Swiss Army knife of guns. The idea is pretty simple in concept, but potentially it's got huge applications. You carry one gun, and that gun transforms. As you progress through the game, the developers say you'll get new blueprints that change how the Recycler can transform and what modes are available. There are 6 base modes to the gun to collect, and each mode has an intricate weapon modification system that is layered on top. That system is intended to let you steer each base mode in different directions as you evolve the weapon. In terms of experience, the Recycler is Archetype's way of tying progression to a single constant tool rather than a whole range of different replacements. Now, it's also not all about combat. Archetype spoke about exploration as well, specifically exploration tools that can be upgraded and used heavily in combat. So I guess there is a connection there to combat after all, but one of these is the Reeled Claw. It's described as a traversal grappling hook that you can get around quickly and do all kinds of interesting things with. There's also the Livestone. This is a material that was described as being found in the Centauri cluster, and it kind of resembles a mix between mineral and vegetation. It was said that June has unique abilities to manipulate Livestone, and described as a specific Livestone upgrade called Shape. Now, Shape allows you to manipulate Livestone in the world, using it to make cover, reach different areas, and build bridges for your companions to get around. It's also framed as a way to manipulate the environment to unlock things, rather than just being treated as the environment just being treated as static scenery. So, if we connect all of these together, these tools kind of suggest that there's going to be an experience where movement and space control are part of the overall experience of the game, and these will connect into combat as well. In other words, it seems like they're designing gameplay where the player has a lot of agency and you kind of decide how to progress past various different environments and combat situations. Now, moving back to companions, these do have a pretty big place in the game, and each of them have got their own personalities, their backstories, various different motivations, and they'll all have distinct gameplay roles and synergies as well. So one of these characters is a guy known as Tom Vargas. He sits on one end of the spectrum. Vargas is essentially described as an experienced traveller who joins forces with June early on in the game and teaches him the ropes of being a traveller. So he's described as a generalist with combat gadgets, the kind of companion who can serve as a flexible partner whilst the player is still learning about the wider world. On the other end is another character called Salt. This one is described as an awakened octopus in a big mech suit, and this is a big thing about the game in case you're unaware. A lot of the other races in the game, there are creatures from Earth, other different species, whether they're octopus in this case or other species that have been awakened. Essentially, over time, they've evolved through human intervention to become intelligent beings in and of themselves. And yeah, the game is set many thousands of years in the future, which accounts for this possibility. So yeah, Salt is an awakened octopus in a big mech suit and a merciless bounty hunter to boot. Another character is Phaedra. Now, this one was described as a hyper-excited, super genius scientist, extremely positive, constantly experimenting, probably in ways that she shouldn't, it was said. In other words, there's going to be a whole load of different characters here with a different range of personality types. And yes, for those who are interested in it, romance is very much a part of the companion system, but it does come with consequences. Now, outside of the main character yourself, June, perhaps one of the biggest characters in the game is Caleb. Caleb is played by Matthew McConaughey, and he effectively acts as a mentor to the character, the player itself. So the developers described Caleb as a voice of wisdom to June, whilst also serving as a voice of the people back on June's homeworld. It was added that Caleb's background is a bit mysterious, and that June learns early what that means and why Caleb will play a pivotal part in his evolution. Now, beyond that, the developers didn't go into too much detail on Matthew McConaughey's role and the character of Caleb, largely I would assume to avoid spoilers. There's also another interesting element here with the time dilation, and that's how it will affect villains in the game and how over time they will evolve and grow. It's shaping up then for Exodus to be a very interesting game. It's the very big space RPG that we've needed for a long time. We haven't really had a good one of these since the days of Mass Effect, at least in my opinion. But it now seems that we've got at least two on the way. This game, Exodus, as well as the upcoming Expanse game. Both of them sharing a lot of similarities in terms of the type of gameplay they're going for, but also both approaching it in completely different ways. The only downside with Exodus is that the release date isn't anytime soon. It looks to be currently scheduled for 2027. So that's everything we have on Exodus right now. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. Do let me know your thoughts on this in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll catch you next time.